Just run with that. Just run with that.
Well.
Whoa.
Like, I feel like we should say something like super smart, you know, like
Okay, or something
the
really
way
smart.
that you compose the shot, like, makes me feel differently about my life.
Don't say anything smart.
First of all, when we work together, I work for her. She's the boss. And then
Here
it goes
we go.
really well.
No,
No, but
he-
a
I
lot of
think
times, like if we shoot a show, say it's at the Joyce, they do Tuesday afternoon as the dress rehearsal. Like I go and I shoot the dress rehearsal, and then I come home and I have my experience of seeing the show like this, and I'm listening to the music for the timing of the shot, but I'm not getting like the whole experience. And I'll come home and she'll say, "What do you think of the show?" And I'll be like, "I don't know. I'm not. It was a little slow. And then she'll go and she'll see the live show that night because she's going to film the next day. And she'll come back. She'll be like, "That was the most amazing show," because she's taking it in the whole show as like the actual like show. And so instead of seeing it like this, looking for that moment of like movement and architecture and
A jump,
choreography
whatever.
or jumping, you know, whatever. So that's a big, right? We have
Yeah,
that
and
happen.
I think also Christopher, like, he just shot Camille with me at the Kennedy Center, and so shot the dress rehearsal and then did the wide camera. And I think it's like a little strange for you to, I mean, you're a photographer first before you're a videographer.
Yeah.
And so then he'll like find those moments and create as a photographer and then shoot like the wide shot. And I think it's a little like, like
No, I disagree. It's very different. You know, it's very different. It's particularly at this show, the stage was big and they had a big set. And when you're shooting the wide cam on video, you want to have that establishing shot. You know, and so we talk ahead of time, like how much of the set are we going to keep in there? In this particular show, it was a very wide set, and it was basically solos and duets. And the stage was
until
big.
the very end, yeah.
Until the very end. And so, like, when I shot the dress rehearsal that afternoon, I was literally down, like, in the 4th row or something. I was very, very close, trying to get a wide shot of everything, but then also honing in on, like, you know, the choreography and, like, really kind of, like, small, like, movements and stuff. And then shot the show live on video, and I'm capturing, you know, they had this big set. So it's, like, it's quite a bit different.
I really like how Christopher composes interviews. Like a shot for like an interview, and also like B-roll for like more of a, we call it more of like an artistic film, or more of a like shooting in the studio or something like that. And
Yeah,
so
we'll do stories like when we go out to Vail to do the Vail International Dance Festival. Nel will do 4 or 5 of these like short 3-minute documentary kind of films where those you know, she's mixing like live performance stuff with like interviews and process work. And so I get to be her cinematographer. We're
Yeah,
like,
so he's
you know, like
cinematographer.
we'll discuss like the location and the lighting for the interview, and then I kind of compose it, and Nel is the you know, is the
Producer.
interviewer.
Yeah.
And producer, yeah. And also too, like, you know, she'll send me to go get some footage of the process work and stuff. Sometimes we're both shooting together, but I get to, you know,
Yeah, sometimes
she's
we'll
the
shoot at the
boss.
same time.
And
Yeah, so I don't really like move as much into his business. So it's more like if like a Jodie Oberfelder just hired us, and you know, so the contract is photography and video, and so it's all through Nel Shelby Productions. So that's why he says I'm the boss. Oh, so you really do want me to start with like I turned 3 and you know. So I've been one of those that have been dancing, you know, since I was little. My mom enrolled me in tap, jazz, ballet, more like tap and ballet, since I was, I think, 2 or 3 years, probably 3 years old, you know. So I've been dancing a long time, and I grew up in Evergreen, Colorado. So so we had like the Dolly Dinkle dance studio, and Merle Worth was the head of the studio, and I just spent a lot of my days dancing. I wasn't getting a lot of like technique. I didn't really know what that even was, but that's what I spent my life doing: singing, acting, dancing. And I think that there was just like then I went to boarding school, and I was also on the dance team. Like I performed for half times of football games. So I was a competition dancer for a while. So we went to Disney World to compete. We went to state. We won like second in state in Colorado. I was totally the cheesy dancer that was like, I was a very happy dancer, and just loved, I loved dancing. I just spent most of my time doing that. So then I went to boarding school in Missouri. They had a great dance program. So I did water ballet. I did, or synchronized swimming, whatever you want to call it. But we had like shows, and then I did dance. So every time that if there's water ballet in the spring, I did that, and then in the fall I did dance club, and again it was just like choreographing, just making just fun dances, have terrible costumes to prove that I really did it, and then when I decided to go to college, I thought I wanted to be an education major. That was like, really? I just thought that's maybe what I should do. Then I started traveling with a group called Up With People, which I think some people in the dance world know that I've done this, and a lot of time, I don't know if you know what it is, but it's a traveling group, and there's 150 people in my cast, and you go all over the world, and you do a show, and our show is called The Festival, and you do the show in 80 different cities, and then you also do community service. So we would stay with host families in each of those cities. So I'd be in Germany, I'd be in Finland. We'd do the show. And so you were either like, if you couldn't perform or anything, you were called a stage son. So you'd be on the stage and you'd like bounce like that. But then since I sang and danced, then I was one of the main dancers and also sang. And so that was an incredible experience. And then I went and found Stevens College in Columbia, Missouri, and I got a BFA in dance there. Harriet Ann Gray, who I think Deborah Jowett danced with, and she was, I feel like she was a cram dancer. I'm not getting this right, but she started the dance program. So it was a very good dance program. I was really lucky. It was 3 years and 2 summers. And then I also was a broadcast major. And since I had already done 1 year of college, I got rid of a lot of my gen eds, so I could just focus on film or on broadcast, my broadcast degree, and on getting my BFA. I mean, I feel like my life happens organically. I mean, I think most people, if they really look at it, their life does too. But I feel like my life happens organically, and I don't really know how that decision came about. Like, I remember thinking, oh, that'd be really cool to work at like a radio station or something. And then my dad said that there was he found this videotape, and I think he sent it to me, where I was like, I'm gonna film someday, or I can't remember, there was something that I said like in high school where he was like, can you believe you said that? That was maybe me projecting, like that's something I wanted to do. I decided I wanted to be Katie Couric. I just loved, like in high school, I would just watch the Today Show, like so random, at boarding school.
Everybody watched the Today. I feel like it was way more a bigger part of our lives.
Yeah, it was a big part of your life. Like that's where you got your news, and then you'd, watch Katie. And I just thought I wanted to be in front of the camera, and I wanted to like deliver the news. Until I found out when my professor said, "What bleeds leads, Nell," and I was like, wait, I'm a really positive person, and I'm a spiritual person, and I cannot tell people that someone got murdered on the corner of the street and feel okay with that, and you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's when I put myself behind the camera, and I was like, oh, this is cool. So I made a documentary about one of my professors. Her name is Ciene Simoes, and she is a Brazilian woman, and I became best friends with her daughter, Julia, who now lives in Paris. And anyway, Ciene would choreograph on us and would teach us modern class. And she was creating a piece, and she made me the mummy in her piece. and it's so random. I mean, but it's just it was a wonderful piece. She always liked to make really big pieces, and I just thought, oh, wouldn't that be fun for my senior thesis to make this documentary? So I already experienced like shooting from like I was in the piece, but then I interviewed her and I interviewed dancers, and then somehow I filmed the piece, and somehow I filmed the process of the piece, and then it was like a 30-minute film that I showed to everybody, you know, right before we finished school, and that was like my senior thesis project. My best friend Megan Fowler and I, Megan, her husband actually is a producer on Ellen DeGeneres now. And
That's a dream job.
Yeah, I know, totally. And Megan went a little bit more of like the TV route, but we were both, she's a beautiful dancer, and we were the only dance broadcast majors in the history of Stevens College. And so we would have classes like just the two of us. So our professor, Dr. Clark, would sit and teach us like theory about broadcast, like just the two of us. So it was, and then I did, I was in a lot of, we had a lot of New York choreographers like Henning Rupsum, who you probably know, Sean Curran,
Of course.
Roxanne Butterfly, Fred Darso, flamenco dancer. They all came to Stevens, like the middle of Missouri, and would choreograph pieces on us. So I felt like I sort of knew, when I came here, I felt like I knew some of those people and had a connection to New York. Like, I guess like many people do, I just thought, this is where you come. Like, where else would I go? And then I got an internship at Jacob's Pillow Dance Festival in 2001. And that's where I was like, wow, I was not the only person that thought that dance and video or film could combine and make sense together. Because there, you know, that summer at Jacob's Pillow, there were pillow talks where there was like a dance filmmaker that came and showed their film, and they were talking about how they used to choreograph, and then now they got into filmmaking because it's very similar. And I, you know, of course I thought that I was like the first person ever.
We all do. Me too.
I know. You're like, I'm the first person ever that's interviewed anyone about dance. My mentor or my boss was Carmela Vassar Johnson, who had just done hair stories for Urban Bush Women, had just created the film. So I really looked up to her. She danced for Philadelphia, had been on a cruise ship, like dance on a cruise ship. I wanted to dance on a cruise ship. So my big story of like why like I came into documenting dance, is because I wanted to dance on a cruise ship. And the only video I had is me singing cabaret, Sally Bowles cabaret, like at summer dance at Stevens. And I felt like I did a hell of a job. And the video was so terrible, and you could barely hear me, and you could barely see me, and I looked like a little pea, and so I couldn't apply to this cruise ship, and so, you know, I never got to have my career as a cruise ship dancer.
You didn't have the footage.
I didn't have the footage, so that was a real bummer, and so that's like, I feel like that's like that pinnacle moment where it's like, that's not going to happen to anybody else. I'm going to make sure that people have good documentation of their work, so that they can get more jobs and people can notice them. So Megan and I, going back to Megan, in school, we created Production Plan 2005. That was our company, which is like such a horrible name. I don't know why it was, like, I think it was Production Plan 2005 because we thought in 2005, we graduated in 2001, so in 2005, we're going to have a production company. So that was sort of, that I already knew I wanted a production company. My dad is an entrepreneur, has always worked for himself. So having a job wasn't really in my family. So I did get work with Urban Bush Women, and Carmela got me that job with Javelay. So I started working for Urban Bush Women, but then I was able to, I never felt like that was a job. Like, it was during an interesting time for Urban Bush Women. They were going through some stuff, and then also like Javelay needed help with their archive, so it was like I had all that Jacob's Pillow experience. I'd been around Norton all summer, so I was helping Javelay with their archives. I was filming things for the company, and then that's where Vanessa Manley, who I was working with, she's like, "Girl, you need to get a credit card and you need to go buy a camera because people are asking you to shoot video." And so I went to the local bank. I'd never had a credit card in my life, and they were like, "We can give you $3,000." I was like, "What?" Felt like I had won the lottery. I went to B&H, bought a camera, started shooting dance. So Roxanne Butterfly was my first show that I shot at Symphony Space, and then, you know, it sort of, again, like organically just started happening that more people started to ask me to shoot their shows. I really based my business on word of mouth. This was like sort of, you must have a website. I didn't have a website till 2006. So, and if you think about it, I think I shot Roxanne's show in 2002 and had a camera and bought my first laptop, bought Final Cut Studio, you know, and it was totally word of mouth. I had Urban Bushwoman. I had got my Pilates certification. Thank you. I couldn't think of that word. Pilates certification through Romana Krasnowska, who's like the mother of, in my mind, the mother of Pilates. And so I had Pilates, I had Urban Bushwoman, and then I was like shooting shows. 2004, when Carmela hired me at Jacob's Pillow to be the videographer, and I guess Carmela Norton hired me. And then after, 2004 is when I think I started to have more courage of, okay, I can let go of Urban Bushwoman. I can do Nel Shelby Productions. It was called Nel Productions at the time. And then I had Pilates. So I still was teaching Pilates. So I was still having a little bit of that disposable income. Not disposable. Wasn't disposable. But I still had other income.
Okay.
And then it wasn't really until 2008 when my daughter was born that I had enough courage to like let go of Pilates. She was a preemie, so she was born early. And so it was like I just had to stop teaching Pilates. And so it was a nice like, boom, okay, so my Pilates life is over. This is like my full gig. And then I got my website in 2006, so a little bit before that, my first website. That felt like a really big deal. Mm-hmm. And then in 2008, I got a business coach. And she's the client attraction business coach. And that is when I started to learn to love marketing. And she taught me how to market my business. Yeah, so I've spent most of my career documenting dance, so filming concerts and making promotional videos. And I always wanted to make a documentary. I mean, I'd made that one that I told you about in college, but so PS Dance came about mainly Jody Arnhold and Joan Finkelstein asked me to come to Jody's house and said, I had already started filming the Dance Education Laboratory at the 92nd Street Y through Jody. And so I was making some promotional videos for her. And so she liked my work and she was happy with like everything. And then they said, okay, let's talk about like following a few teachers in the New York City public schools and really documenting what they do with these kids. And then we're going to show it to like the chancellor of New York, or, you know, we're going to show it to like the mayor, just to be like, this is what happens in the dance world, you know, in the dance education. So I was like, okay, it'll be a 20-minute film. So it's getting close to the end of the school year. And I'm like, okay, we have to start filming. I find out I'm pregnant with my son, Jack. So then I'm like wanting to throw up and drag my camera like through Brooklyn and Queens and whatever. I just was going, we literally just would show up, we'd film. I mean, the teachers knew we were coming, but they didn't plan anything extra. They didn't change their outfits. It was like, this is what's happening. Mm-hmm. So film that. I had my editor, Lauren Robertson, who's been my longtime colleague and really, really good friend. She was editing and sent it off to Jody and Joan. Said, what do you think? This is a little longer. It's like 30 minutes, but we can always cut it back. And then before you know it, Jody's like, you know what? I think that we should show this to Channel 13, WNET in PBS in New York. And so she did, and they were like, oh, this is cool. So then we started working with a producer at Channel 13, and she's like, all right, I think we all decided we should add another teacher. We should like add professional development to show that the teachers have professional development. And then it just started to expand. It was aired on Channel 13, and then it was aired on different PBS stations all over the country at various points. It's continued to have showings in places all over the country and even the world. And then we created an LLC called PS Dance, Joan, Jody, and I. And slowly, I mean, Jody's the real mother of this, making it happen. But slowly, you know, we're opening people's minds that dance education is important and really a necessity. It's important because, like, what else do we have? So, like, with theater, you know, you have like the script. Like with a play, you have the script, and with art, you have the actual painting or sculpture or whatever it is. And with dance, you really only have just like, oh, that was a really good show. Mm-hmm. And you have the review. Roses. Yeah, and you have the review.
Your mom like hugs you.
Yeah. You have some roses right afterwards, and that was really nice. Or you have the grant proposal that explained like what the dance was about, or you have the notes in the program that explains it. But there's nothing like seeing it. And so, you know, I don't think that obviously video is not replacing the live performance, but video is a vehicle to be able to see what happened. And I truly believe in it. I feel like I've seen people, especially at Jacob's Pillow, come back after many years and see Ted Sean perform kinetic multi or something like that, and because it's filmed, it's like, oh, and then someone's studying it and someone's writing a book about it. And so I feel like I have to, you know, we think so immediately these days of like, we're not going to need this tomorrow, you know, but we're going to need this in like 20 years. So I feel like I have definitely the mindset of like, okay, who's going to look at this in like 20 years? Like, we're really encapsulating what happened in a moment in time.
I grew up in Fairfield, Connecticut. My parents were both from New York City. Both were lovers of the theater. And so as a kid, like, they took us to the theater all the time. I want to say musicals were kind of like my favorite thing. We did go to the ballet too. We didn't really, I don't know if we ever really saw modern dance. Maybe we did. I don't really remember. Ballet sort of more sticks out in my head. Like, I remember like seeing the Nutcracker and stuff, but probably other things too. But my parents were both really lovers of the theater. Even still to this day, my dad, who lives in suburban DC, goes to the theater like 3 times a week.
Seriously?
Sometimes more. Like, he's a subscriber to...
Season ticket holder.
Yeah. Involved, volunteer, subscriber, ticket holder. Yeah. Kennedy Center, Arena Stage, like regional theaters, like all kinds of stuff. Still loves it a lot.
That's so nice.
So I was instilled with that, you know, that love of the theater. I never felt like I was an artistic person. I went off to college. I was a business major. I got lucky where my college was opening a branch of school in Japan. Like, they sent me to Japan for a year, like as a business major. Like, it was amazing. And it wasn't until I transferred after Japan to a state school here in New York, SUNY Geneseo. We had a theater department. I was a business major, but we had a theater department, and I had always liked the theater and thought maybe this is my chance to kind of get involved. And so I walked into the theater department and said, how do I get involved? And they all sort of like looked at me. They're like, oh, you're a new major? I'm like, no, I'm a theater. I'm a business major, but I just want to kind of, what can I do? They're like, well, you can be on a running crew. And I said, okay, what's that? You know, and they said, well, the dance performance is coming up and you can be on the wardrobe crew. So, okay, so I show up in the wardrobe department, and small state school, small theater department, theater and dance were in the same department. And they put me on the running crew. So, like, I remember the thing that I remember the most is being there during the show, like backstage, and it was like so exciting, like to just be a part of it from backstage. And then I also did the laundry. So I did a lot of laundry. But I really loved it. And so after the dance show, which was like 3 or 4 performances, I said, when's the next show? What can I do? And the next show was a drama, and I was on the wardrobe crew again. And this show, there was a lot of like, it was a period piece. There was a lot of like dress shirts and stuff. So I remember I did a lot of ironing. but I loved being a part of the show. I loved being backstage. I loved being a part of the creation of it all. I do love to sit in the theater and watch stuff, but I love being a part of it. So that was really like how I got lit up about being a part of the theater. And later, I did change my major to theater. I got involved in acting, and because I was involved there and stuff, like I remember one of my friends was a dancer. I was doing I was playing African drums with friends, like just pop, 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 pop. She said, "Hey, can you play your drum in my dance piece?" It's a four elements. There's like earth, fire, wind, whatever. I was like the earth piece, So I was in a dance show. I think that's the only dance show I've ever been in, actually. It was thrilling. It was thrilling. When I moved to New York City to be an actor. Didn't happen at all. I got myself a part-time job working as a receptionist, fill-in for someone at this construction company. It turns out that the construction company was doing renovations at the Joyce Theater, which I'd never heard of. And he said, so-and-so's coming back from their surgery. You're going to be out of a job soon. Can I help you find a job? I was like, okay. He's like, let me introduce you to Linda Shelton at Joyce Theater. So I was like, oh, okay. So I got a job in the box office. Part of the perk was that we could go to see shows when tickets were available. And so I started going to see all these shows. I remember seeing like Stephen Petronio and Eric Hawkins, and I remember I fell in love with Ballet Hispanico. I remember going to see Goodnight Paradise. Ballet Hispanico did this Ramon Olier piece. I've told this story to the people at Ballet Hispanico a few times, Eduardo and stuff because I just remember just being completely like taken away. I went to see Ballet Hispanico. They did this piece, and then I went back I'm getting chills just thinking about it. I think I went back every night, and they were there for either a week or 2 weeks. I worked there for about 6 months or so, maybe a little bit longer, but I just really got this bug. I loved it. I loved dance. I loved it. So fast forward several years, I started getting into photography. Friends started getting married. I started shooting pictures at friends' weddings. A total hobbyist, but I loved it. I loved this. This was a way I could be creative again, because I wasn't involved in the theater anymore. And then I met Nel. I met Nel at a friend's wedding, and she had just moved to New York. She was living in Weehawken, New Jersey, and we started dating. And she was Pilates, and so one of her Pilates bosses needed some pictures of her in the studio, and this was at the dawn of the digital era, and she wanted digital pictures. I rented a digital camera to shoot these portraits, and that was the job. It was on a weekend, and that night Nell had a dance show that she was shooting here in Manhattan, and I said, I've got this camera. I don't know. You think the choreographer would let me shoot pictures? It wasn't like it was at the Joyce or something. It was at like a small studio space where there wasn't like rules and stuff. And the choreographer was like, as long as you let me see the pictures, like, yeah, sure. So I didn't know what I was doing at all. And I sat in the corner and I just took pictures during the show, and it was like so exciting. I was like a part of the theater again. I was like a part of it. And I got like one image in particular that just stuck out of my mind that I was like, this is so amazing. Like it was this beautiful spotlight from the back, and the dancers were in a row, and one was up and one was down, and one hair was going this way, and I don't know, I loved it. It was like my first like portfolio piece. I still had no idea what I was doing, but I got really excited about it. This was maybe like 2002 or 3 or something like that. By 2004, Nell went back to the Pillow as the video producer, and then 2006 they hired me at Jacob's Pillow Dance Festival to shoot like 5 cocktail parties. It was like the gala, the Ted Sean Circle, a few basically events, and they needed some like kind of beauty shots of the Pillow grounds and stuff. They didn't need dance photography. They had a really terrible intern the year before that, and so 2005 they had a horrible intern. They had a bad experience. They didn't have a festival photographer as a part of the 2006, they were preparing for 2007, which was the 75th anniversary season. They're like, we need some beauty shots of the pillow. We got to get ready to market the 75th anniversary season. Like, so they found some money in the budget to have me come just for a few days. And then if I wanted to shoot some other stuff too, I had access, but they didn't need that. The New York Times, when they came to review, they sent a photographer. The Boston Globe, they sent a photographer. That was sort of like back in the day when they did. And also bloggers and those kinds of things like didn't really exist yet because those online platforms hadn't really yet been born. It was like very early on. It was still mostly about print, and people had budgets that they sent their own photographers. So that was my footstep, or, my foot in the door at Jacob's Pillow. I started shooting it, the outdoor stage, inside out. It was like magical. And then the next year, one of my pictures from Inside Out was the front page of the Arts and Leisure section of the New York Times. There was a national story about summer festivals, and it listed all these different festivals around the country. But there it was, like, above the fold, they call it. Like, my picture. It came out on Mother's Day. And I'll never forget, we were in, like, Starbucks, and my phone rings, and it's Nell's mom. And she had just gotten a call from Aunt Barbara. And Aunt Barbara said, Christopher has a photo in the New York Times, and it's a big one. It was like so exciting. So like we go to find the paper, and like sure enough, there it was. And like I bought like 3 copies or something. I walked around for the next 3 days like I had it like under my arm, and everybody I saw, I was like, "Can I show you this?" I was so excited. The Times must have asked the Pillow for pictures, because the Pillow knew that this story was coming out, but they knew that they had submitted pictures, but they had no idea if they would choose a photo or if it was going to. They don't know where the placement's going to be and stuff. So they were as surprised and delighted as I was. So it was just amongst some images that they particularly loved from the year before. So fast forward 12 years, and my role now is really centered a lot more around capturing the dance. 2 things, like capturing kind of like pillow life, and I work in the marketing department. So creating images that we can use for marketing to sell the experience of coming to Jacob's Pillow, not just the dance on the stage. So, yeah, I mean, they still have a photo intern every summer. Like, I'm mentoring that intern, and I'm there as much as I can to make pictures of like festival life. One of the big things that I do is Wednesday afternoon is when they do the dress rehearsals of the 2 indoor performances, and that's one of my big responsibilities, is to capture images of the dress rehearsal and deliver them immediately so they can turn around and use them for marketing. They may need to sell that show this week, or they may need to send pictures to the New York Times or the Boston Globe, because those guys don't send photographers anymore. And also multiple online, bloggers and reviewers and local outlets and all that kind of stuff. So that's one of the most important things there too, is a Wednesday afternoon. But like, there was 2 or 3 summers ago, I had 11 images in the New York Times. They had sent reviewers 11 times. They asked for 4 images, and they asked for exclusivity until the photo runs in print. Once it's in print, then we can use it for whatever we want. But but there's no compensation. It's courtesy of Jacob's Pillow. Yeah. I also do wedding photography full time as well. So like there's many weeks at Jacob's Pillow where I'm there all week long, and then I'm in the car Saturday morning heading out somewhere to go shoot a wedding all summer. Mm-hmm. So yeah, no, it's never been full time. It's been a challenge for me. Like for a while, I was so jazzed about it that I wanted to make it my full time work. And as far as like income potential, I just was so frustrated. I was really, really frustrated, because a lot of the, in order for me to make a living doing it, either I have to do it nonstop, and there's only so many dance shows that are happening, or I have to raise my prices enough, and that wasn't really where the market was for that. So it was very challenging, and quite like frustrating. And some companies can barely pay anything. And then in my mind, some companies can pay more, but they don't want to, or this is where their budget is, or like whatever. And so yeah, I mean, like this past week I had 3 shoots, but that's rare. I mean, sometimes I do 3 in a month or 1 in a month, and then, I mean, at Jacob's Pillow I do 3 in a day, So it kind of really varies. I mean, this last week I shot the Ailey Gala on last Wednesday at City Center, and then we went off to the Kennedy Center for 2 shoots with Camille Brown, and then on Monday night I had the Dance Magazine Awards. So, which was great, you know, so. And that's a blend of like performance and event. And same thing with Ailey. Actually, all 3 of them. Kennedy Center, like they had a donor party before the show. Then we shot the show. Then the post show. You know, they had the step and repeat, and people like posing in front. So it's like performance live. That's a real specialty. And then there's the event stuff that is a specialty too, but it's a little bit more broad. Definitely, there was definitely a learning curve, and thank God for digital because you get instant feedback, and you can shoot a lot and make a lot of mistakes. So yeah, there was definitely a learning curve, and you know, I really studied the New York Times, you know, Andrea Moen. Like I studied her stuff. When the pictures that they use, like I was really focused on like what's in this what makes up a picture that they're going to run in the New York Times, you know? And it's like most of the time it's horizontal. Most of the time it's like you see the fingertips and the toe tips. Most of the time you want to see the choreography, not just one dancer, unless it's a solo piece. You know, you want to be able to show like the signature move from the piece itself, and so you get a flavor, you know. Also being able to capture several moments of the piece, so like the reviewer kind of like hones in on this one part. Like there's an image in my you know, delivery that can speak to that particular thing that the reviewer is talking about. So yeah, I mean, there was times when like I cut the feet off and people were like, you cut the feet, you know, like you can't do that. I'm like, okay. I mean, because I'm not a dancer, you know, and you know, there's some people like Rosalie O'Connor, like she was a professional dancer for she had a career, you know, with American Ballet Theater. Like she knows exactly. I mean, before her career, she spent millions of hours training, you know, so she knows exactly what a ballet is supposed to like look like. For me, there was a learning curve. I mean, the favorites now for me are the more like what I call creative portraits. You know, like they aren't necessarily like the live performance. But sometimes too, like favorites are because like there was specific challenges that like I rose to the challenge. Not that it's some like great photo of like the dance, but like maybe it was a challenge that I had to overcome in order to get that photo. Right. Because like when you're shooting dress rehearsal or live performance, you know, it's their work. It's not my work. You know, so when I get it to do my creative portraits with dancers, then that becomes a little bit more being about conversation, and my style, my flavor, my voice gets to be put in there too. When I'm shooting dance, like the dress rehearsals, like I'm really trying to communicate the choreographer's vision and artistry in a way that someone seeing the picture gets a sense of it. You know, whether it's matched with a review or whether it's in a gallery. You know, and Nel was talking about before, like presenters, like seeing the documentation and stuff. Like, so a presenter like sees that image and has a sense, you know, of the piece. And so the more I can kind of remove myself from that, and I'm not talking about having it just be like a dry like document. You know, like nice composition, nice moment, like eyes are open. I like to see the face, you know, but all of that and the flavor of the piece, you know, so it looks like their work. Otherwise, it could just be anything in a different costume. So we were in staff housing at Jacob's Pillow, and which was great. Every summer we'd go up and we'd have staff housing, and our daughter was born, and we lived in shared house with other people that were on seasonal staff, and they didn't sign up to be living with a baby. They signed up to be a part of a dance festival. And so it kind of wasn't working anymore. And we luckily found a cabin that we bought down the block from Jacob's Pillow on George Carter Road. So since 2011, we've had our own home in the Berkshires, which is just insane. So I forget, maybe it was 2013 or 14, Nel says to me, we have to get a trampoline. I'm like, why? She's like, I grew up with a trampoline. I want my kids to grow up with a trampoline. I'm like, I don't know about this. Is crazy. So sure enough, we go out and we buy a trampoline. So there it is in the backyard, and Gracie's very first time, she's like jumping on the trampoline. She's like 3 years old or whatever it is. And I pull my camera out, and I get this, you know, as soon as she sees the camera, she like does this like split, and I get this picture, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is like a thing. Like this could be something. And I wasn't sure if dancers would feel comfortable jumping on a trampoline because like they're here to do a show, you know. So I don't know if they feel like it's dangerous or like I really wasn't sure. But I offered, you know, hey, I've got this trampoline at my house. People were psyched. I mean, and you know, so dancers start coming to my house, and as soon as they get on there, they're just like, woo, this is so, I haven't been on a trampoline since like when I was a kid, and la la la, and it, you know, it puts them up in the air. There's that extra bounce to it. It's delightful. It's smiley. It's, I don't know.
You know, it's like now everyone has a DSLR camera, or they're doing Insta stories, or they have their iPhone and they can do stuff. And I feel like I had those moments of like, how is this going to shift for me? And I feel like I had those moments of going, like, I would talk about with my marketing manager, Amy Jacobus, like, to make more creative films. And then I got to this point where I was like, we still need to document dance. Like, we can't stop just because there's Instagram and we can do Insta stories and we can do really short little promos and creative, you know, more creative dance films, meaning like behind the scenes stuff. I sort of felt like I always have to go back to my roots of like how I founded my company was to make sure that like dance on the stage is filmed and documented. I don't know if that answers your question, but that I feel like I always have to remember that that's like where I began. And that's what's still important to me, because you can get super distracted by all those things.
One of the things that I find really interesting in this digital world is that now that there's an incredibly expanding amount of media that's being put out, and how do you wrap your arms around it? You know, like it's not just one photographer at Jacob's Pillow making pictures. It's like hundreds, thousands of people coming #Jacob's Pillow. And
how do you archive that?
Do you want to archive that? Is that important? You know, like, how do you wrap your hands around, like, as an institution or a dance company? Like, I shot Alvin Ailey is at City Center for a month. How many people are going to come do selfies and hashtag and all this stuff? And it's a part of their story as a dance company. It's a part of the story as Jacob's Pillow. Like, you know, say I shoot 1,000 pictures in a day at Jacob's Pillow, and the intern shoots 1,000 pictures. Do we cut that down to 5 pictures? Do we not even need those 5 pictures? Do we want to keep them all? Like, Pete Souza shot pictures for President Obama. Like, the law says every record of the president must be kept by the government. So every picture he took was an official document of the United States.
By the way, he was to be Pete Souza, just so you know.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we're not that, but you know, that's a ridiculous. Those gems of video content and photos get lost. You know, like if you look back to the 1940s, 30s, whatever, like there's only a few pictures, so each one is like a treasure. But now there's thousands and thousands and thousands. So to pick those treasures out is super important, and culling it down. And now curating is is becoming more and more.
What's the most important thing to have? Like we were having this conversation with Chelsea, who does social media, and Norton at the Pillow. It's like, okay, so they're doing a Facebook Live of Third Thursday in Pittsfield. We're also filming it. Do we keep both? Like, what do we, you know, do we even need to film it anymore? Do they just Facebook Live it and then we archive the Facebook Live? Like, you know, what, right. Even Chelsea walks into rehearsal and she films something of Larry Kegwin, let's just say, and like, do we keep that little snippet that she did? It's so different. And then not only that, but like before I felt like, oh, I have so many mini DV tapes and I'm going to archive my tapes and I label them perfectly. And now it's like, oh my God, I feel like drives are coming out of my ears. Like, you know, it's like, how much space can I have? And now I'm buying, like, I bought 7 terabytes for my server like 3 years ago. Now that's like, everyone's like, 7 terabytes? You know, it's like, that's like nothing now. Sorry.
First digital camera, I remember I bought a 256 megabyte card, you know, CF card, and then they offered this 1 gigabyte card, and it was $330, and I was like, I'll never fill that card. But I'm going to get one because I'm like a professional now. But I'm sure I'll never fill it. One gig, you know. And now it's like I have
Now
multiple
it's like
64 gig cards
right?
for
Oh,
a shoot,
64,
kind of thing,
yeah.
you know, it's like. So yeah, I mean the quantity is just piling up.
You're like, oh, it's just a file. It's just a gig. It's just a.
Right.
And before it was like that's a tape, like you store it and that takes up some room, so you physically see that it takes up room. Whereas on the cloud, like like all of us, our Dropbox has like a terabyte, and I'm already at 900
gigs. If it's not tagged and labeled properly, it just disappears.
Yeah, and then you can't find it, and we're talking about like this. This is like the really hard part.
right?
Yeah.
We have incredible, fulfilling, amazing, creative work, and we have our beautiful little cabin in the Berkshires. So we have our special little home. Like when I grew
And our
up,
trampoline.
when I grew up, my mom and my Aunt Janet like told stories about the lake. They always went to the lake. They had this little cabin at the lake, and it was this like romantic, like childhood like thing. And now I feel so grateful that we get to offer that to our kids. Like Grace.
And when
daughter,
but when they complain about it, like, we're gonna go with the bugs, I'm like, don't even. Like, let's just stop there.
But
like
our kids are growing up at the Pillow. Our daughter loves ballet, she loves dancing, and she gets to see and interact with and be a part of and make friends with world-class dancers from around the world.
Yeah, like she was like improvising with Andrea Miller, in the studio. She doesn't remember that now, unfortunately. I have to remind her, remember when you loved improvising with Andrea? And Andrea remembers. That's amazing. Or when it's like, she knows Wendy Whalen, and then she's like, hey, Wendy, and Gracie's like, or Wendy's like, Gracie, what's up? Then it's like, that's pretty surreal, But I think also, like, there's also the flip side where you have to remind them, like, not every kid gets this. Like, you are...
She thinks that a normal thing is you go to see a show and then you go backstage and you meet the people in the show. Like, that's...
Yeah.
That's what
we
you
go
do.
back to see Daniel Olbrecht to New York City Ballet, or...
We went to see Fiddler on the Roof on Broadway. We went backstage.
We went backstage because there was a Galeem dancer in it, and that we know. And,
And it just, like, practically every show. So, like, that's just normal.
It sounds so snotty, like, saying it right now. But, like, that's just our life. It'll be interesting to see what both of our children do. Like, Jack says he wants to be a tap teacher. And he's 4. He's going to be 4 on Tuesday. And, they seem to... They love to dance in the living room. Gracie her musicality is pretty remarkable. So I don't know. You never know what all of this has to... Like, how this is going to shape their life.
Well, we'd love to spend the year in Paris.
I thought it was Germany. We just talked about Germany.
Maybe 1 year in Paris, 1 year in Germany, maybe 6 months, who knows. But we'd love to spend a year abroad, like working with dance companies, dancers, and like creating films and
And
photos
Christopher
together.
wants to photograph for the president. Not this one. But his dream is, like, if there's a cool president, like Obama, that you would be like Pete Souza.
Well, I was kind of obsessed with Pete Souza. Like, it's pretty awesome. But also following Obama, I think, was really interesting. That's obviously a long shot.
Yeah, but we do think it would be really awesome. We've had friends, like we just had some friends go to New Zealand and take their whole family there for the whole year. Our business coach moved her family to Paris, and now they've continued to stay on.
But how cool would it be to be in like residence at the Paris Opera Ballet for a
Meet some
year,
new companies,
or something like that, where we can really kind of dig in and offer our talents and have that experience and have our kids have that experience too. Like
To
that's
be somewhere else.
so that's one of the things that's a dream. Also too,
Yeah.
like we really love working together on on
Documentary projects. Like we have a few that are, I guess I probably shouldn't mention totally, but that are
some
on
creative
the
projects that we
horizon.
follow the dancer and the choreographer through the process. And
That's
then,
what we like the best.
It's really fun, like
Yeah.
hearing about the artists and how they work and how they collaborate. And
I love being in the studio.
I love it too. It's
we
so
both
exciting.
when
It's
we're
so
in the
exciting.
studio, or even when we're in the theater. But when we're in the studio, I feel like we both feel like time just stops.
It's amazing.
You're just...
I mean, like we go out to Vail and like Damien Wetzel puts like Michelle Dorrance and Tyler Peck together, and it's like you see the show and you're like, wow, this is a great show. But back up 2 weeks, and they, you see them step in the theater or to the rehearsal, and they're like, "What are we gonna do?
What are we gonna do?
I don't know. What do you want to do? I
Bill
don't know."
Irwin,
You know,
Bill
like,
Irwin and Michelle,
so
like,
you
sitting
see
there.
those ideas like just sort of like start to form, and then you get to the show. I mean, it's an incredible process.
Right.
We
You know,
usually pinch ourselves like after
Mhm.
all. Yeah.
So being a part of those is that's fantastic.